Hello. Hi, guys. Welcome. Happy May Day. Thank you for spending part of it. Yeah, we can cheer for the international workers of the world. We can do that. Happy May Day. Fabulous. I'm Kay Gabriel. I work here at the Poetry Project. It is such a delight to welcome you to tonight's event celebrating the launch of Breathlehem, the selected poems of Jim Brodey. We can definitely applaud. We're applauding for international workers. We can definitely applaud for Jim Brodey. That's so exciting. I am going to provide some logistical notes, and then I'm going to call up Peter Valente, who edited this book and will host tonight. Bathrooms are upstairs and to the right, and there are accessible restrooms in the sanctuary, and if you need to access those, just ask me or one of my colleagues who can open the door for you. Please join us again at the Poetry Project on Friday for an event we're doing with Wendy's Subway called She Follows No Progression, which is a celebration of Teresa Hakyung Cha. Super exciting. And then come back on Monday for Tillman Goldsboro and Fula Abdul-Jabbar. Fabulous. Yeah, thank you. And then on Wednesday, Emily Johnson and Eileen Miles. So that's going to be so exciting, and we'll be excited to see you here again and again and again. I think that's everything from me. So now I will just turn things over to Peter Valente, who edited and brought out into the world this super exciting volume. Jim Brodey is an amazing poet, and we're so excited to celebrate his legacy tonight. Thank you. Well, please welcome Peter.
Jim Brodey. Okay, so, well, thanks, Kay, for the introduction. I'd also like to thank Laura for organizing this celebration of Brodey's work, and also for contributing some poems from fugitive magazines, as well as images of flyers of poetry readings at the project. I'd like to thank Monica, who couldn't make it. Hi, Monica. And James for contributing photos of Brodey alone and in the company of poets. I would also like to thank Bill Zavatsky for going over the poems and checking for errors, and for writing the introduction and suggesting the right title. You know what I mean, Bill, right? I'd like to thank all the readers for accepting the invitation to read. And finally, I would like to thank Sanjay and the folks at Local Knowledge for taking on the project and publishing this beautiful book. So it's been 30 years since Hard Press published Heart of the Breath. 30 years, a collection of Brodey's poems edited by Clark Coolidge, who was actually the first one to see this manuscript in its preliminary stages. And so over the years, I noticed that all his books remained out of print. So I thought it was time for selected poems to bring his work back into circulation for readers. This collection contains selections from all of Brodey's work, including some poems that only appeared in rare magazines and were never collected in a book. So I think of the book as sort of documenting the active and exciting period in the New York poetry world that Jim Brodey was a part of. And serves as a reminder that he is one of the best poets. Jim Brodey made his own music as he went along. It was the wings that lifted him, and it was more than a comfort to him. It was his reason for being. The music he made was also a sexual excitement, a power he had been given and developed, a power he received and not for nothing. His being was and remains a celebration of this fact. And I think the work in Breathlehem, the selected poems of Jim Brodey, is the proof. And also, I think, like Kay mentioned, Brodey would have really gotten a kick out of the fact that this launches on May Day. Okay, so the next reader is Sanjay, the publisher of the book. Sanjay.
Thanks, Peter. I'm going to keep it really short. I just a few thanks. First, for Peter Valente. So Local Knowledge started off as a publisher of a literary and art journal, and we were crazy enough to think that we would start doing books. And after 9 issues, Peter and I were talking, and he said, I've got this manuscript, I want to put together a manuscript of Brodey's poems. And I started reading the material. I was like, this is fantastic. We've got to do it. And, you know, we got it done, Pete, right, in a pretty short amount of time. So I want to thank, it was basically the team, was me, Peter, and Abdullah Hassan, who is our designer. He's designed, along with Tom Haynes, our Local Knowledge creative director, many of our magazines. And he did a wonderful job. We put it together very quickly. And I also want to thank Bill Zavatsky, who wrote a beautiful, wonderful introduction. So it was basically, you know, a small group. We put it together. We're very proud of the results. We're going to be doing more books now. We just got IRS official approval as a 501c3 nonprofit. So expect more books. We're going to continue with the magazine, but we're very, very proud that this is the first publication of Local Knowledge. I want to thank everybody here at the Poetry Project. They've been fantastic, so supportive. Thank you, Laura. Hey, everybody, thank you so much. And I think we're going to start the reading. So.
I neglected to mention an important logistical feature of tonight. So that's on me. As people who've been to group readings here before may remember, the way that we'll do this is that I will not run up between readers. Instead, you will just cue each other. And then we have a sheet, readers, we have a sheet here for you, so you can see the name that follows you. But that's on me for failing to say it. So our first reading tonight is from John Godfrey.
I choose to read from the front of the book. I first knew Jim shortly after, let's see, we were in the same place on occasions in like 66 and 67. But I remember going to Bolinas in the back seat with him to visit Tom Clark, somebody else's car, in the winter of 68, 69. And a few months later, I came back to the city, was scrambling around. He and I got together, and we started having a lot of fun. Zen bullshit. We hit it off because we could make each other laugh. You know, you're telling an ordinary story, and you had to doctor it up to the max. He had a very excited mind. And he and his first wife, Tandy, put me up for, about a month. They lived on Bleecker Street, right off the Bowery. And thereafter, they went to California after a while, and he came back occasionally. In the mid-70s, he returned from the West Coast, and he was living with his mother and his stepfather in Pearl River. And he would come into the city occasionally. He finally got an apartment in the late 70s, and in fact, something like 1988 or 89, was about then that he moved into an apartment on 12th Street. He was in my place like 7 days a week. And he would tell me everything that went on in his life. It was quite amazing. And I discovered that some of his stories that people were convinced were giant lies. Things that happened before almost, I mean, Jim was breaking in at the age of 20. I mean, he was studying with, our heroes at the age of 20. And he was on scenes at parties and whatnot. He would tell people stories, and I would hear about the story. I knew that Jim had a lot of imagination, but not about things that big, certain personalities. So I knew people who were older and at those parties. And I'd say, do you remember the party at so-and-so's penthouse? And it's about 1962, and so-and-so did such and such to so-and-so in the crowded living room. And they go, oh, Jesus, that was amazing. I said, oh, okay. It was not a lie. I'm going to read a poem I've always dug a lot. Jim was not yet 23. It was written in 1965. He was 23 at the end of November that year. In it, you hear him pulling a few tricks of Frank O'Hara's type. You hear him doing Kerouac Zen Ginsberg. You hear him go a little cosmic. A lot of touches of East Village-y insouciance. And who he is totally overwhelms the source of all of this stuff. He just totally overwhelms it. And he was 22 and change. Poem. Back at San Francisco Greyhound, leaning, and I'm not thinking or yearning, I'm just leaning, dreaming of hamburger with everything. I've always wanted everything. And this dull terminal wait makes me want laser beam dust street, poems in apothecary jars and crumbled barbershop window, white button energy to get myself out of drug trousers, like Mayakovsky into revolutionary clouds and off city streets, which are wet. Overhead jet streams vapor trail, the gate 14 departure air swarms against me at vendor comb machine. My movie, California Foldout, has collapsed, is on the cutting room floor. The terminal to take a bus or eat a cheeseburger. Do you remember that day of independence in spelling? E flat, A minus. The membership of stickball nuts, idols at the lap of unfold, and telescope looking through consciousness of picture window and vertical golf field. Transportation terrors and waste bag sickhoods. Yes, this is the exploration of one adulthood. Poems met with mathematics and Denver bus, wrote this scribble of red farmhouse flattened together, iced melons, lunch counter, the sky over Colorado like Norman Bloom's Dunkirk, soaked with sponges, creaking twilight to evening. The price of my poems is one hamburger. Independence in spelling, I tell you, man, Jesus. Brodey had a way, I think it's going to be coming up here, where Brodey never went swimming in country streams. He never changed tires in the days before, tubeless tires. He heard inner tube as intertube. He would be talking about nuances, and then he would write Noyance. Noyance, okay. I had questions over his vision. And his second wife was convinced that he was dyslexic. The second poem, which was written in not much, this is what, 67, something like that? Is a little longer. I'm not going to worry about that. It's around 66, 67. And this shows you how Brodey would have a subject matter, particularly if it were a person. And it was get started, and then a third of the way through the poem, you realize that that person isn't who he's talking about. He's really talking about his own interior life. He was also writing this at a time where the New York school, on the one hand, was all about style, and on the other hand, it was all about poems about nothing. Words that rambled along together. They could be read, meaning they could be understood in a certain way, but that wasn't the point of it. Another factor was that it was not the beginning, it was the American culmination of the idea, the aesthetic of digression, where you would go from one place to the other and you were not explaining anything. This poem is called Peking Blues for Ishmael Reed. A poor smoldering in collision with flesh-colored instruments grew transformed, ascending the afternoon, the middle of the dreams in the cubicles of the immigrant-born. Lights went on, flooding the windows with glares of light, eradicating the people in the street, pressing humiliation from a deck C cubicle to shadow oyster beds. Pieces drifted through, tides under the pole of public offices, joining in separate swivels, the map carefully peeled off, isolating compound fracture, the face of rage and big floating invisible. Of wrinkled paper we ascend, pulled up away under surveillance, light bounced off thousands of jars, filled with waterfalls to turn off machinery. Gray, melodious, bending in overflow, in detail, the charis, them ribbons, and garbage was a picture of colors. A people in some boxes in a small room were emptied and soaked with useless technology, nothing more than a laying together of hands. Scream of day-long underfoot is caressed by panzers. Our fears are swallowed in unused flames, and huge trees are distinctly falling over in the pines. Nothing like all things together in parched upheaval. Gray boats, uncalm seas, the clothes are gray along the tributary amid buildings in which we congregate and walk unshaven near Trenton. A person always like the Yenisei, the emerald green of blast, flows swiftly to its unperfect goal, in better times on other liquid shores. I destroy what is mine, gray, tireless stones and boulders. Rubbery laden with darkness, taking root, I'm death's motionless vagrant. The hands remain empty, through tears refilling special meaning to the brain, full of angels. I place myself under arrest. I walk back several paces from the smoke. That oddest device which is reigning is fear. Moving axles and stars, warm now, strapped construction is gleamed toward the opposite line of defense. To accept the cold air, bits of bread sail through the burning timbers where equators assail gray flowerless lengths, imitations of the circle, the useless mystery opening around you. The waterfall is concealed and drawn on double edges rice paper. In every picture, the mountain is visible somewhere. We are drawn together in cold air's undeduced result. Different levels of the mouth, in fact, of the idle depth, severe, miserable, continually separated, breathless waste spiraling further out than the picture, nature, of this once allowed. Everything is projected onto a question of acknowledgement. And this I had never heard of and is bizarre. It's dated 67, the first issue of The World. Mold Prayers. Vito Hannibal Akanchi and Jim Brodey, a collaboration. You know, Akanchi, who was 2 years older than Jim, actually got an MFA at the University of Iowa in the early 60s. I don't know if he got the MFA, he was there anyway. So he had a writing instinct, and then he became like a performance aesthete. Mold Prayers, and M-O-H-L, no idea. There's a mention of DMT. Everybody knows what DMT is? Oh, okay, yeah. Strange stuff. I'm experienced. I remember, geez, I almost got into trouble once because it was a big newspaper item. I won't go into the story. Mold Prayers. Strength, weakness, we find mid-face a ting of what is pain, ornaments liquid free for continuance of yearbook, of soul, of human and animal, effect a quick pull, DMT, against many bridges to consciousness and universe. Fang tells us of trouble, stash the rocks with ivy, put mustard in pole, blight be hidden from rules, hard home, goose feathers, but Poe's son's ting be eaten, be free of spirit, be human in animal hair. A bridge over bridegroom never ends, nor a show in hydrants to be snuffed, but human form is a bird never ends. What sun's been cannot leap like. Strength which returns us to his pose, evil grasp. 2. Prepared by a prepared bracket, shown tramps all celebrate, all celebrate. Hexagram is prepared with regret, and now the rivers float heavy and their waters filled with suds. Such users is a good head, like geese heading home through summery crescents. Ho, attainment is gathered to disorder, ingenious accumulations divided like an evil hill. Such is the wind blown, and we return hungry to feed on the tits of productive accordance. Yes, such firm jaws are an end to life, far from compass points of due mean. Such are the words of our altar. I am returned of X, operative, continuance after the sleeves are cut from the arm. The same human will grow as a fang, accordance of the folded shame. Look. The passerby will commit the ox correctiveness, distress in the lower spiritual tract, sincerity of our hearts. Balls, we will pull up the grass being bent on our ruler to his robe. And transaction, he will have good fortune in disrobing cities. The hosts of prayer will combine the fortune cookies with strangulars in the universe. He say, I am not away where the trail is immersed. And this prayer will ring forever above the heads of naked virgins, suffering the hands of invading horde. And thus did our master enter speaking Lano. Go to Berlitz. I wrote a supreme good in a second-hand Red Sea. The light laid me wandering of a month in the result. And I went up to my toil of 20 secrets with our thoughts in symbolic. Commentators, I concise my teachings of you, man, symbol of the universe, from nothing. I am employed by 56 scholars with ordinary appendixes. Into the minds and hearts of my students, I'm interspersed. Long after the translators have left my text, the mole is improved to the mist of a disorder. Such a key, needless to say, is not necessary, nor is explanation of my father, Poe, a belief in straw. Thus far I am not pleasant to dwell in. I have intention to Lano. No talk, all die. It is more sung than shouted, or said through the mouth of tree or mouth of status, than the lips of high priests who are invisible and unholy. No time, no place. A pouch is accident, as you may believe you are. I do not remain in the swelling places of man to gulp unfriendly handshakes, shit on them with intertubes and sweat nights swept to oblivion. I, who am mole, crave the printed papers of industrial sentence, virginal, skullduggery, gold chemicals, leaf, intersection, and hate rising above flaming cities of invading Lano. He, man, would say, what are pictures? Ida liber juxta escolis tradi pia tixidisi o regex solitam. That's 67. Only Akanchi would have done fake Latin at the end of the poem. Anyway, it's a trip. Thank you.
And the next reader is Vincent Katz.
Thank you, John. That was amazing. I'm so excited about this book. I'm a huge Brodey fan, so this is kind of like pure candy for me. And the whole, production of it, the cover, I love this photo on the cover. And it reminds me of something, which is, there's going to be an edition of the journal Paideoma later this year, which is devoted to Jim Brodey's prose, which includes interviews, but also his prolific rock criticism and poetry criticism. And also, I'm excited that in this volume of his poetry has included his Cottonmouth Whirlpool autobiography, which is also in that Paideoma volume, which, goes from his early days as a kind of a hoodlum going to Alan Freed's original rock and roll shows. I mean, you get a lot of information that I think helps to explain his poetry. But I interviewed him back in the day, and I remember one of the things I wrote in my intro, or one of the things I just always thought about him, and I think made him so unique, which you can see in this photograph, which, first of all, he was very stylish, but also he had this kind of energy that I think I referred to as animal magnetism or something like that. But he had this kind of physicality that is great, and you feel it in his poetry and in these images. I'm glad there's so many photos in this book, in this poetry book. And I was thinking, hearing John read that, art, poetry that is both of its time but also ahead of its time, it kind of comes into clearer and clearer focus as time goes by. And these poems just seem so precise now, especially hearing them read aloud. Unemployed tunes. Sun pressure on skylights. Gone as revolving the world in such ecstasy. Mental buzzings bugle into long hair. The vagrant bondage. The absorbent beer can haze of Mr. Jasper Johns. Magnetic broodings. Density of black, where bargaining in emptiness, one begins to unwrap the quilted geraniums born to alien speech. Time where all bathed in bong is holy. The silver stranger, the prophecy rose of clouds in the doorway of lights. This is Walt Whitman speaking. They're not all dated, but this one's dated. It's from 1977. Manhattan Chowder. Moonlight on my greatest lark, and where's that at? 40 tons of undisposable lipshits. We're in a kind of Second Avenue bag, one big steam room rising out of antiquity, an urge as big as Jane Mansfield was, and poor little me buried without a sugar cone. That thought and the Tennessee Valley Authority are all that's keeping me warm. Hey, wake up the big brain upstairs. Let's get the creature comforts going. Recycle roaches as helmets for the poor. And the blue, green, gray air pours out of a Coke bottle moon. The camel smoke in Times Square is thick as a brick. The buses lumber out of that glare like so many iron whales. A city in war paint opens its legs when toothsome muffins waltz in from Flushing, biting everything. Replicas of Olson's famed Dogtown seem to be trying to tell us something. Base on balls, bottom of the ninth, 2 out, and 3 men on base. And I'm as high as the sky and twice as blue. That sounds as though I'm a cowboy song, not a truck navigating 10th Avenue calm. What gives? It's just your average concerto of the streets. And next up is Samuel Espindola Hernandez.
Good night, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. When I received the invitation, thanks to Laura, I was very happy and I accepted almost immediately. And so happy to see the book. Hopefully you have the book by now or at the end of this event, because I think it's so full with friends, memories, warm. This warm event also is a reflection of that, so I was very happy to see that. So I'm gonna read this poem that is Spirits of the Everyday. So it's a little, you can see it's in the middle of the book. So it's kind of a long poem. I think I'm gonna read the beginning and the end. Okay, so. Spirits of the Everyday. Lingering drowse, bent action of summer, the final mass become eternally cold, without vapors. This is the moment when cold restored, we walk this island erect, fulfilled as a location. A being in the streets with a purpose, walking in sunlight that it's turned cool by comparison to the eventual rage of long fired summer. Shadows in the alleyway. Cold purple marble stones, tones shot with luminous sweating bloated white tents, colors of the underside of each working boot. Bold of images, both useful and redundant, summoned up to add resonance to these lines. We take as reference to the whole workable cycle of casual being. This city of human toil, being swelling with prime function, the need to need, and the needs of those needy to soar in a paycheck. Not some bitter shred of this world we are put to by or outer longings. This the toil working man's death. This is the purpose, exhaustion, that's beaten up like yellow temples in the egg to rise and be consumed. To replenish the feeling fibers that are our arms and bodies we do our tricks in. No longer outside, apart, aloof, besides, now anew. That most eternal channeling, caring for energies we thought most lost to a child's eye view, lower than the rightest fake edge on a hinge. This is the message that light force has sent to us. That change is the enemy to no one need fear. These shifting tides of streets filled with workers going about their jobs, talking and laughing and tasting of some singing vein in the neck of the world. To these spirits, to those capitals of waste and reflection, to time and its toil, a beginning seems the same as a middle, as a sharp blast of frosty warmth jetting down the arms of this city, of the body flat against sleeplessness that cannot walk. Is complete upon thinking, at intervals no less apparent than the truth that we continue. Working up a sweat, heavy breathing escalates cells to dive through veins stream, rolling great blood mass, interrupting waves and getting messages, hot-blooded functions reacting to selfless toil, the fearsome recognition of these waves, the tremendous energy that we give generously without a cost signature to a far sphere beyond the bluest fuse that burns from within, outside this life's force we sometimes must ignore to remain in control of our features. Pain is a worker too, and love, a great spinner of internal webs, desires and fears go hand in hand, services rendered on an hourly basis, pot reading, Our emotions take steno, control voices go lax, alcohol enters the body as sugar, as an energy that we take to mean by superficial means, ways into and out of dreams, long stems of patient rose, blue tulips, and red begonias, frosty white dogwood blossoms shattering in an early damp street, the voice of nature's color. Trucks are a landscape, mobile and vile. Sympathy is the luxury no one dares allow. Sweat is the only measure of our toil. I'll take that gladly. Thank you. And our next reader is Rochelle Kraut.
I'm short. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Jim, I know much has already been said about Jim. Bill Zavatsky's introduction to the book is so beautiful, and there's not much I can add. I remember hearing about Jim coming to New York from California. He sounded like a rock star. Seeing him for the first time impressed me. He had a cock-of-the-walk saunter and a smile closer to a smirk. He was not shy about looking you over. He was scary. But Jim truly encompassed multitudes in Whitman's best sense. He was sweet, and one could sense his vulnerability. I didn't keep up with him as the 80s went on, and I was shocked to hear he had died. I want to mention the poet Susan Cataldo, who had a close friendship with Jim, and I wish she were here. It's sweet to be invited to participate in this event, to say a few words about Jim and read a poem. But then I remembered something. In the 70s, Ted Berrigan asked me to sing a couple of his sonnets at one of his readings. I did this at several of Ted's readings here in the city at that time. Jim heard me, and Jim then did this. He knew the jazz pianist Dave Burrell, and he set up an improvisation session with Burrell and me. It was 1977. We went to Burrell's West Side studio. I don't remember much about it. I probably did Ted's sonnets. I know I was petrified to be there with a famous jazz musician. I do remember that it was energizing and inspiring. And as I was reading through this new book, there were so many poems that inspire a song interpretation. Oh, so now to honor Jim, I'll do one of his poems. But first I have to compose myself. This poem is Homeward Bound. As flames are drawn from turbines' roar, the gypsy life reprocesses from wads of bullets in plaster. Where in darkness can I wander from to be homeward, returning the poet, impolite among iambics, to play with such a tangled living in breath out there? Oh, as feelings lift the line from the page page and throw the words like knives into a passing sideshow. Point blank, the black rings of tape measure mark off my despair, audible among the blurs of lassoed sonatas in static air. The shrubs multiply, ranked and freckly sweat, miles of stretched, palpitating flares are lit to amble. I am meadow sweet in the torn and bloodied shirt of my fathers, and the orange peel sword hilt of my countrymen who went this way, homeward bound, to blow the dust from my family crest. My cup, my cup, my cup. Thank you, Jim. My next person is Murat Najat.
Reading Bill's great introduction, I realized that I met Jim in the declining years of his life. I can tell you this thing. Over the several years, we are friends, and we are close friends. I never saw him one instant where his mind was not absolutely clear, and where poetry should go, and the difference between a good poem and a bad poem. And I joined for the first time the Poetry Project, coincidentally, during the launch of Paul Auster's French anthology. And a few months afterwards, I was asked to read the manuscript of my Orhan Veli translations from Turkish, on which I'd been working for years. And I came and read the poems. Then I went and sat down. And the guy next to me says, "These are some poems you have read there." That was Jim. And ever since we became very good friends, we always sat together next to each other at the Poetry Project. We came to every week, we were here. At that time, the variety of readers was absolutely stunning, and very often somebody was reading that we didn't know what kind of work he or she wrote. And we had a habit of, it's terrible, but we would listen to the poets whom we didn't know a few minutes. Then we would look at each other, say not a single word. We both knew what we thought of that poet. And during our friendship, we always, after the readings, went together to the bar, and we never talked about poetry, okay? He would tell me these lurid tales of his life. I didn't know, as John said, whether they were true or false. Okay, but I listened to them. And anyway, I just want to thank Peter for putting this book together, and Sanjay, Local Knowledge, starting its publications with this brilliant selection. And I hope all the books that I'm sure Local Knowledge will publish, it will follow up to the standard. And I would like to thank Poetry Project making this launch possible in this venue. Song. I want to get on that freight train running through your heart. Breathlehem. Fog creeps along sullen buttes, gets caught, rises, bumps, jerks loose. Desire flirts with the capacity to go batty. Hashish oil sends waves of knowing flowing through the body of love. Asleep, bright green star systems rage against Calpurnian flows. Sadist, white-hot adrenaline engines takes up bleep spectre eel nuns, nominating want to bluest molten tip come forth. Brazen, gargantuan grief radiation punks, month-long spires, snooze snap slurs into limo pics, rebellious fiction fermented pity for vanishing Pope Panda, polecat vivisection impulse to nuke madness, stuffed father image, elevation, spilt depression suffer. Cycling through now Gans, livid dough fannies of craze welts, knowing new body cosmos, whipped into pale hunk space by cremated manic visitors to this high place, snuffed zoo in burnt-off fogs, in animal sugar, impatient poet politics, brightening every second toward absolute sincere reaffirmation of bliss crown grunt lobbying new brilliant words. Break out, come down, take tenderness over spangled hurdle, heart twinge, rush into raccoon pulse magnified by invisible powers that be, braided with regrets for the ancient mariner caught in our beam, bristling of panther curios, battered motion, posing to eat from Neptune's poisoned pan, emoting, needled breath swarmed in, kneeling, desperate, in cancerous belly bargain, shuffled, the whole of first illusion, a world balancing lions in scarlet holes fed to new contortionist breeding Guston ribs of manifest space, box torn apart, Arthur Craven's solution to world affairs, bleeding, bending, shovel of peers. Hear me, O queens of seasons, rost and centuries past, gleam, preeth, posh, whisper flame, rising, refrigerated, saint talk from August spring punt, gold gel isle tone mat bat gland. Take, eat, moist capital P for purple rods gem into shoulder of a cold sun, inhibited by trespassing juju, jumping rheumatic boss jocks, digging up sonic treasures, the ear cannot, digging up sonic treasures the ear cannot hold, wag a foot bent with stoop, fine glue powder, Cherokee hydraulics lifting that image we have of sleeping galaxies up into likely fired higher limitations, bow to the Afghan mutes, spitting heartbroken tempura and glass marijuana, dealing language shape to frogs, melding bitter circumference back into squished exclamation points that coughing do attest to grinding Nubian penetration and horses plod ridiculously onward. Graceless as ballerinas defeat speeds, melding, continue to run down the heart's fixative scale and burn down to the flag popped out of the toilet. The flag popped out of the toilet with eyes. And disconnected, a breeze melts on a bluebird beak pecking at bliss stream flowing, a new like vibrant world of seashore, leaking frumpy abstract tooth beard, pecking out circumstances that in Hanoi pass as the snarl passes unnoticed in paisley blur bomb flash, eradicating black suit at the bottom of an empty heart to emit noiseless eruption of a gallbladder pronto. Who was that masked man paying allegiance to huge guppies swimming in smooth braids of alcohol's pitiless vivisection of nerves, welted on the edge of soul's fruition too? And fog leaks banana fashion to drag out another twilight in boogie blizzard, in sneezing reindeer palace, in pansy vacant promise to win back vanished species from their date with a bored creator. Importance in ingredients of slop qualifications, in biographer drag, in crime rate dungeons of mezcal beer, in rodent persona, in loveless fedora scratch, in monsoon turbulence, dealing on sparkling footpath through the deeper magnolia, on Tibetan couscous, wailing dock of intermittent passions ringed by so sweet a concoction as to knock the pupils of falsetto monks, washing their pubes in desolate correction cells, Gider, Rahmos, Pans, Mon, Gider, Vim, Eurasia, Chopfan, Fum, Maringe, Wuge, Haringe, Spantini, Twerp, Twerp moistening, Uka, Freen, Gaga, Merk, Rong, Fusitash, Re, Pistar, Cram, Oilquag, Limdoza, Beam, and Rant, Runny, Victoria, Wine, Nod, Warring, Crea, Quipt, Stupid, though, eating, dotted line inside a rose. Present person disqualified, perfect tense, adhesive. Boobies, copper snack sugar, umber grudges granula, stitches on vegetation's golden veined sleeve. And El Duce was pumping gas for Tampax and spare change, avowed Maglo Anglo-Saxon nose jewels trickling off a confessional tone, knocking one ember of rosy steel through choked magnificence of roiling fuchias and sherbet crest anointed with raisins and chuckberries. And lately I have come to think of the typewriter as a symphonic instrument on which I pound out vast insect music, of lovely valentines plugging up the gullets of free men everywhere. That's all stashed the breathing pea pods far below the radium cocoon, creating smoothed vowels to pick at the brains of insistent suitors, wooing homage to the poet asleep in his verses. Go write the music and a few coppers for your thoughts. O Scribners, O Graham Nash, O girlish Neptune, budding fish mind Aquaman, walk out into another person's sky. Their space even now opens to envelope you, O Simone de Boulevard, ruffling the paper, bearing me your name sound of a sideburns crinkly curve. Nothing Stephen Foster would imitate or could the slightest specific sentient change. Saves burn against the eyeball, trying to catch them up in gloved stone crash pouring, wigged out, Dante, UHF sworn by Sestinas to first locate, then fling scrambled eggs at the sore-foot geranium wisps to where ocean pursues kelp, lacies, lace, hung on fragile rocks where, if stone continent rose out of desire for peace, a few well-chosen words to indicate prime directive, cuts splicing through disorganized religious space of several meters blown on the lawn of Leon's magic mind picks, taking the kelp, Gemlin's udder, to the master's door, rapping down several verses of Iglo Grin. Now, thank you. The next reader is Jem Pelly.
Thank you for having me. I'm really honored to participate in this reading. Like Jim, I'm also a music critic and a music journalist in addition to being a poet performer. Am I, the mic okay? Okay. So when I got a copy of this book, I was really excited and kind of like, oh my God, no way. And the last time I read it, The Poetry Project, was 5 years ago, a piece about Joni Mitchell. So I also felt very psychically connected to him, that there is a piece inspired by Joni Mitchell in this book. And the photo of him and Joni in her backyard, I'm so curious about. If anyone has any information to share about that photo, I'd love to hear more after. But this is called Listening to Joni Mitchell. Listening to Joni Mitchell, a relaxed faint flame flutters through the notion to be on Upper Western Avenue in Hollywood right now, savoring a few of those rosy, clear, golden blonde sunsets, walking hands in pocket, just shuffling along, or riding around in a fast open car, long hair furiously streaming in the soft evening breeze, the lovely springtime Southern California night coming on. All kinds of light going on in the houses. Green floodlights crawl up patio windows of garden apartments, and the used car lots light up everything, opening their doors to classy, all-chrome showrooms, to a few shy Mexican families who are wandering the streets, gazing in all the shop windows, giggling at the blinking lights, smiling. Diamond Sutra candy stain catches explosions of traffic glare as intersections fill up with several misty, perfect emptinesses that are merely parking fields on Sunday morning out near the beach. All that light, all that life, all that space, phew, and I'm sitting up in a purple t-shirt in New York City in the most immediate dark my mind could conjure, blinking against a naked bulb on East 5th Street, the full moon blinking out from behind speeding snow clouds that seek to smother the natural purple of the air. Still listening, a few thousand glowing angels illuminate my hair an instant, flying past me, sitting here, stock still as huge chunks of some larger world floats past, quickly as some lesser Mercury roars into molten energy and carries our message back to the stars. And the next reader is Bob Rosenthal.
It's a great pleasure to be here and celebrate Jim, who used to sit over there and around that table. with all of us young poets and have a great time. We'd even go to the open readings and have a great time. And the times are so great, I don't remember them. But this poem that Peter was nice enough to suggest for me, because I just was having trouble figuring out which one to read, he did. And so the important thing to know, if you don't live in these villages, is these old buildings have steam heat. And when steam comes up for the first time, it's really loud. It's knocking, banging, clanging, but you feel good because the heat is coming on. And this poem really illustrates Jim's genius as a poet, because he's mixing, there's a plethora of famous jazz musicians in here, but it's about the heat they bring. Poem. Art Blakey is in the furnace. Elvin Jones is in the pipes. Tony Williams is in this room. He has no cocaine, only through time minus time, as the wind does. It's no time step. The heat coming up these pipes, it's a surprise. Too early to be believed. The rhythms, taps, and bonks, bongs, and knocks, music we'd reserved for memory only, a fresh, a new beginning for the heartless season under the leather wraps, fur infused with laughter and the like, a sunset. This is the tune of a city winter coming on, aquamarine sky studded with Nubian smelts. The air is charred, but clear of smelly debris. One chance is given for a happy year. It's the old 1,000,000-to-1 shot. The getting up so soon in the morning urban jive in these pipes so early and deep in my nervous system of iron flows connected to red dots flashing. Joe Jones polishes off his brushes. Eddie Blackwell connects the dots in the sky with gay funerals of New Orleans and the spacey Africa. Dennis Charles lifts this room with his inventive clunks and hammering kit wax. Cecil Taylor's left hand cyclone pushes all before it, and the steady growing sky fills up with an inner inbred light we cannot cease but wonder at. Gawk, as the British say, learning nothing, but the heat does come on. Amma Birch.
Good evening. I've got many thoughts on Jim Brodey. I want to thank Laura for inviting me to be part of this cacophony of voices. And in my research on Jim, I learned that he was a fun guy. A real fun guy. The first poem I'm going to read is George Armstrong Custer. What if, in the very end, I am lonely, alone, passed over by life's incredible maidens because of my too personal outlook on things? What other person to put the blame on who could I turn to in that final hour of life? Who can I turn to now but the city of myself? What name to adhere the this final loneliness to the ground that'll surely take in as it took and take so many more before this old coot on the rubbish heaps and in the defamed rivers whose waters are polluted from the word go. Could these accept my ashes as ashes I will be? What cause could I utter some noxious byproduct of America's floorless greed, a time-denying effect built upon poverty, loneliness, and what men and women do to each other? These are my common cares, writing whatever came into my head for my own just amusement. I'm no therapist of residency. I have an art to save me, and from such boredom, I will not be thwarted by some newer, more modern style of hearing, touching, smelling, and feeling. There is a personal separation betwixt myself and the greater junk society of an America that's enveloped on every level of human experience. I love those cold mornings in New York when, frostbitten suffering loops of eternity, we stroll out for a newspaper and find ourselves tricked into understanding the meaning of things, a forged, semi-literate subversion, fragmentary at best, the vividness of poetry itself, our things. Another thing that struck me, I've been reading a lot of James Merrill recently, and it surprises me that James Merrill was the poet of the day when Jim Brodey was running these streets. They seem so in opposition to each other. I jack off on the government. I jacked off on the government last night, twisting in dream bed sheets of solid electricity lather, green dragon-faced monitors police my hospital corners, aching to catch my feverish screams, squirming out of my sweaty pores, on fire with chanting, squashed down rabbis brandishing Phillips screwdrivers and bowing to no one but Lord Vishnu in human drag. I call upon heaven, let down your veils so I may climb up your golden ponytail and vanish into your vapory realms. Next reader is Tanya Nasser Frederick.
I'm Tanaya. Thank you, Laura, for squeezing me into this last-minute event. I'm extending the favor and squeezing Jake Gaunt last in to read a poem in the same amount of same time frame, because Jay's a really deep fan of Jim Brodey. Dawn Cherry. Mercy is a mother, a bitch of yesterday's paper lost on a windy street in Hoboken, a yesterday of prayers and swollen noodles down the stoops where we've climbed to reach our fates, boiling in the gutters when music surrounds and swells color and abundance into a mystery of need. So climb the music and seize the time. Take off your soul and jam it through the bell of a horn, straight sips of beauty made most abstract by a wonder understood. Need for wealth is a fortune abandoned, but God, its meaning, can sail with the best of them, sure-footed near gospel human beings bowed, dark with heavy chops, plumb crazy and hard on liquid, when it shall overturn the brain's law with a music that conjures generations. And I'm going to read one more little one. It's number 3 in The Voice in the Tunnel of Light. Harder to sleep, so compose television music, apes thought, long strange dreams where my mother scolds me loud, underwater gardens, lost rainy avenues of gray mist, and Joey C. rides a golden cloud with masonite heart. Propelled time rides up on my inactivity, bunches of angel summon me, great billows illuminate Mount Tam, where Zeus munches a hero. The only way to write is to do until the it takes over. What was it Stephen called the Brodey ear?
Thank you, Tanaya. It's very generous of you to share your slot with me. And I'd also like to thank everyone who had anything to do with making it so we no longer had to suffer the indignity of this book not existing. I'm actually going to read a poem that's not in the book, but I couldn't possibly not read it on May Day. And Jim Brodey is my hero, and this poem is why. Well, I don't know, but it's an emblem of why. And it's called Susan Cataldo. Bemused by the sink, I am yours. Lost in wonderment, I am yours. Polished with grace, I am yours. When the sun sinks below the known horizon, I am yours. When Venus travels through its total orbit, I am yours. Immersed in feelings for others, I am yours. I am yours. Transcended with peace, I am yours. On the altar of all being, I am yours. As the apes put the snuff on all humanoids, I am yours. Crazy in projection, I am yours. I am yours. I am yours. Red, white, and blue, I am yours. Under the flag of world communism, I am yours. Stroking the celestial kitten, I'm yours. As masks melt, I'm yours. As the strength of meaning floods our senses, I'm yours. Humid as a Colombian buzz, I'm yours. Born of woman, I'm yours. Served the blood of the motor car, I'm yours. Feeling the poem breathe, I'm yours. Muse, who is life's nourishment, I'm yours. The strength of your charity is tremendous, I'm yours. Breath is spiritual money, I'm yours. Beyond the flesh, I'm yours. Transfixed at your clarity, I'm yours. Written and edited and published and read and known, I'm yours. As the earth is a spinning dot in space, I'm yours. Rocket of reflexes, I'm yours. Inherited faith splashed upon golden accomplishment, I'm yours. A grinning incantation, I'm yours. 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 I'm yours.
And the next reader is Harris Schiff.
By way of an introduction from Jim Brodey's book, The Heart of the Breath, Harris Schiff 2.
For the necktie is not evil, it has no life of its own. The hairline weights itself down by the shores of 12 oceans, a threshold on life that grasps reasons for things I don't even want to think about or try to grasp, spent on 2x4 lifespans, exec look-alike, ovulating with stock footage. These rocks here are the cereal this world will be feeding itself on in 100 years or less. Crawl around in the poem. It'll give you bearings, which will definitely be on life's final exam. So shut down for right now and consider your options, which ain't many, long as you know your own name and not a microsecond longer. So get up with the new words, cut those images fresh from mind, dancer of dimensions, teaching glow. For John Wieners. In Berkeley, recently, vommed on quaaludes. The clouds slithered across the full moon face, smoking a joint on the corner of the quiet evening street, wondering if you're likewise fucked up and alone. Most of you probably know Joe Brainerd's favorite books, I Remember Too, etc. Joe Brainerd Too. I can't remember much about my childhood in various New York City. I don't remember, for instance, the young lady next door whose Cocker Spaniel bit me and was put to sleep before our fearful eyes at local gasworks near Atlantic Avenue. I don't remember stickball or the early rock shows at magnificent Brooklyn Paramount. I can't remember zip guns or wonderful daydreams and the skyline of Brooklyn as it shines in my heart. I can't remember when I became a cow, but here I am chewing my cud, surrounded by bleeding infants, free from hunger and desire as I walk New York's magic streets, remembering every face that put me in this poetic paradise. Flaming streets filled with both lightning and clouds full of nothing but self and emancipation, the conquest of death, attainment of endless world. Those things I remember, so dare. Rain falling on East 11th Street roofs. Do not ask for change. There is already change. Do not ask for hope, for we have hope. Do not ask for money. Money is an illusion which appears and disappears at the will of some god who lives in a manhole on 2nd Avenue. Do not ask for poetry. There are poems peeling off the walls. There are poems in every space and in no space. Poetry speaks for us and to us. It exists everywhere and is totally in control of all we are. Do not ask for peace. Close your eyes at night, and for dreams, there are peaceful dreams enough. There is peace. Do not ask for new leaders. We have no leaders. We are free, and our leaders are all sleeping in bed with money and bombs. This is New York City, and we are nothing but the breaths of a billion other squirming souls who are poets and who are poems. Do not ask for power. There is power and no power. And we are big rivers, and we are little trickling creeks run down streets behind crumbled buildings. The rain of bloody air filters down this air shaft, where we are kings and queens of gigantic nerve. Do not ask for love, because we have love in all its forms, in t-shirts and in typewriters. We have love. Do not ask for colors. There are no colors but the skin of all our breath. Do not ask for poems. There are few, and several of them, like this one, are even good. Do not ask, because men have guns, and thoughts are usually dangerous. I, for one, merely breathe. I have a little pallet to sleep on. The eyes of the whole world are looking at you right now. Ask. The next reader is Bill Zavatsky, who wrote the incredibly great introduction that moved so many of us. Bill Zavatsky.
Seems like the last time I was here was for Jim's memorial. Some of you were here then too and spoke and read. I'm not going to talk much because I talked my way into the introduction, so I hope you will read that. I'm going to read a poem of Jim's that he brought out as a little book called Unless. Unless I stay here writing all night, I'll probably go down to Woodstock and have a few beers, which will get me sick, and I'll come back up here to the mountain in the fucking weird-ass dark and barf all over the porch again. Last time, I was sure it was a rainbow I was barfing. All kinds of beautifully undefinable colors, unknown lovely hues, tiny bits of brown rice stubble, hunks of toasted barley, and gobs of veggie. Of course, in the morning that other time, others slid in my mouth's droppings, in my bright rainbow flood pool, and got really mad. So probably I won't get drunk tonight. Unless I stay here writing all night, I'll probably go see Paul and see if he has any new grass to smoke. But smoking it, I'd do too much. Envision vast ant battles in the garden and ultimately say something quite strange, or otherwise offend someone and get booted out of here pronto. Paul is always getting loaded earlier in the day and would be pasted out anyhow. But his wife has certain unknown rules, and the guys around here can never seem to understand exactly the way I mean things. So unless I'm real bored, I should probably stay here and write. But unless I'm inspired, I just can't sit and write all night. And now I'm real stoked up to leave and go someplace. Any place would do. Same problem in Bolinas, although there everybody except the drunks go to Betty by very early. And there are the same number of nuts who have smoking fits and crazy old ladies and invisible rules and strange regulations and nutty scenes, but somehow I always liked it better there. Probably, sometime in the future, someone from there will read this poem and get pissed off. Whose old lady did I mean when I wrote that stuff? Hello, Bolinas. Don't get uptight. I don't know. Maybe I should get drunk. Nah, just kick back, as they say, and cool it. But I'm so hyped up manic tonight. Must be full moon. I don't know. I ain't been outside yet. So now I've been outside. And you know, no full moon. Just bugs. Lots and lots of bugs. Buzzing. Making trouble for the other bugs to get closer to the yellow cabin bug light. I always thought that yellow bug lights were supposed to keep those fuckers in line and away, out of sight. But apparently not. Ah, well. Unless I have a few more concrete ideas, I should really stop writing altogether. But you know, I can't. And when I realize how terrible and hard it is for those guys in Russia suffering in icky, dark, snowbound concentration camps to just get a few scribbled somethings on a torn pad page, and probably they are hungry and wet, shivering in Siberia's freezing cold, teeth chattering a mile a minute, no real clothes on to speak of, but the flame of poetry keeping them warm from their brains on down to their frost-bitten tooties. And here I am, not suffering, just bored to tears. No woman, nothing to say, a few good books to read within reach, my record collection to aspire to, postcards from people I know and who know me and whom I love and who care, all tacked up on the wall above the writing table, a little flickering candle there too, the machine humming in this great vast darkness of my life, a faint smile on my puss, and an idiotic flair for images reeling through my mind, which absolutely no one really cares about anyhow. And I'm sort of happy on top of all this, though alone, more alone than I've ever been, but not exactly crying about it and writing, which cleaves through the aforementioned darkness. The summery breezes sway through the trees that bunk in their turn into the cabin's wooden secure walls, in the internal darkness that soothes this huge hill, Mead Mountain. Yes, old Mead Mountain, like a spiritual whale of dirt, and rock and plant and shrub and watery stream, hillock, petal, bud, and two, over love's lack, and lost love's remembered light that has passed through my eyes and beheld such gone delight there, unless the light returns and life leaps full again to those peepers I'll sit here writing till, and I begin to think of love's steady hands upon my bod, and I think of love, and I remember, and I think of life that cannot live without love's embrace, and I think of a life that cannot live without love, and I know. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, just.
Now for something a bit more commonplace to you androids out there. This is called Breathless Creely. Denote the pun in your Black Mountain guidebooks. Breathless Creeley took off his hands off the steering wheel. We were on the way to Pantaluma, driving there in Bob's car. We were going around the Bolinas Lagoon, doing about 60 miles per hour. Then he began slamming his fists on the steering wheel, rocking side to side, flooring it. He turned his entire body towards me and reached over and embraced me as the car sped forward at blur speed, ignoring both an immediate turn in the road and the oncoming truck. During the kiss, we floated in space. He was overjoyed. I asked, couldn't we go any faster? And he proclaimed us both masters of the void, alive! Where am I now? He yelled over the din of colliding minutes. 3 gulps of some magic wine smiling into a Dixie cup, Bob sat hardly talking in the Irons' perfectly blue wooden kitchen, while Evan gives me her typical, I knew you in 1967, Jim Brodey smile, as Greg shuffled through smiling, and Tom Veach ambled in, meat phantoms hanging golden voices around our ears. And Peter Rowan's guitar smiles like buttercups creeping up slow through fresh manure, big, buzzing flies in sunlight. The dead shine on from an ancient web core on the floor. The music irrigates spaces, limitless proportions. Bob is rubbing his own words into a fine lint via another shining gallon, that which has splashed over entire front of his few remaining clothes. He continues to finger each word with his tongue, and smiling, that smile that continues to smile till it's well off his face, and never does culminate in anything less than a miracle.
Fantastic. Can I get sound here? Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thanks once again to our readers and to Peter and Sanjay. And one more round of applause for Jim Brodey. It's an honor to hear his words in your voices and in his own. Thanks to my colleagues tonight. Thanks to Noah and Ayaz for running sound. Thanks to our volunteers. Thanks to you all for coming. Have a great night and see you soon.